Welcome to the Ancestral Healing Summit, a free online event where you'll learn from top experts about connecting with your ancestors to heal your lineages and transform your life. Share this powerful program with your friends and family, and come join us on Facebook at The Shift Network. And now your host, Lisa Bonis.
Welcome to this session of the Ancestral Healing Summit with my guest, Suzanne Giesemann. Our topic today is continuing the dialogue with loved ones across the veil. Suzanne Giesemann is a former Navy commander and commanding officer who's now a mystic, medium, and author. Her verified connection with those in the non-physical realms allows her to share a unique and personal perspective on ancestral healing. Suzanne, thank you for joining us today. Welcome.
Thank you. What an honor it is to be sharing with all of you.
Thank you for that. I think your work is so fascinating that I can't wait to dive into this conversation, especially because you as a medium insist on only participating in evidence-based transdimensional communications. So let's start out with talking about that. Given that you insist on evidential proof in your work as a medium, what is it that gives you confidence in saying that our ancestors really are still right here, part of our lives?
I like that you use the word insist, Lisa, because I actually do insist on that from those across the veil, and they don't mind providing that evidence because they want us to know they're still here, they're still part of our lives. So the evidence are those things about their lives that I, as the communicator for them, as the medium, couldn't possibly know. And what's really cool is when they share with me things that even the recipient of the session doesn't know, but validates later, or from other family members. That shows I'm not just reading my clients or my sitters' energy field or reading their thoughts. This is two-way, real-time, live communication with ancestors, with loved ones who have passed, but are still right here.
That's so fantastic to know, and I'm sure that people right now are sitting on the edges of their seats because I think everybody wants to have a piece of this kind of information. Oh, yeah. Let me ask you, how far back can ancestors go? I mean, is it only just the recently departed, or can people who've been gone for centuries come through?
Well, because we're tapping into soul energy, light, that are patterns of energy, but consciousness in expression, there is no limit. But we do, when we're dealing with evidence, want to be able to validate things. So there's only so much that history can tell us. For that reason, I think the farthest back I've gone is some relatives from the Civil War with some of my clients, showing actual artifacts that the family member still has here as evidence, recognizable, a little silver spoon, really cool stuff like that. Or somebody in the family was a general in the Civil War, and that's really big for their family. That was a great-great-grandfather. And I have gotten some great-grandparents, and a lot of mediums do get grandparents. I, in my work, ask for the immediate family, whoever's going to bring the most healing. So in many cases, that is grandparents, but a lot of times it's the parents, the spouses, the children who pass, who want to make their presence known.
Okay, so that's how you know that you're talking to actual ancestors, and not just picking up on the memories that the person that you're sitting with might have memories of them. So you're coming up with information that they don't know.
Oh, in many cases, yes, yes. Okay. And that's why it's when I share something with a client and they say no, I'll say, I need you to verify that with someone because I know what they're showing me. There's such confidence that comes with some of the connections. Not always. This is subtle energy we're dealing with. But sometimes there's no doubt in my mind, they want you to know this. And I tell my clients, get back to me to validate this. And I get emails all the time, oh my gosh, you were right. And it's so affirming. And I can just feel their loved ones rejoicing on the other side. Yes, now they know.
Right, right. And I know that I've seen your Shift Network classes, so I know this, but other people may not know this, that you've seen actual healing that can take place in an instant. And in my own personal life, I've seen that happen as well, where just having a conversation with a loved one on the other side can help just either solve problems, physical ailments can begin to clear up. I wonder, can you share some stories?
Oh, I have a couple that come to mind right away. Like the woman who sat across from me, and I said, "Oh, your mother's here." And she comes with an apology. She's hanging her head, and the woman stiffened. So just by body language, you can tell when you have something correct. So I silently asked her mother, "What's that all about?" And her mother showed me that she had abandoned her daughter, my client, as a baby, along with other family members. And this was absolutely correct. And the mother then showed why she had made that choice. And at the end of that 1 hour session, my client said, "I've carried around anger at my mother for 75 years. And in this 1 hour, it's gone." Now, that's beautiful. But if she had only realized that her mother was doing the best she could, we could have had forgiveness a long time ago. But that's a huge key. Another, a different episode or example of healing was the woman whose son had taken his own life, and she came to me ready to take her own life because she was so distraught. And he showed himself with such clarity, including the toothpick that always hung out of his mouth. It turned out that was his signature thing. Everybody knew him by the toothpicks. And he told her, "Mom, you don't need those meds anymore." She reported to work the next week, and everybody said, "What's with you? Are you on new meds?" And she said, "No, my son is my meds." She had just such a lift from knowing her son was not gone forever. Gone in physical form, that's an adjustment we have to get used to. But to know that they're still part of our lives is healing beyond words.
Right, right. Now, so I'm wondering here, because not everybody has access to a medium, or they may have had a sitting with somebody who wasn't able to bring forth information they needed or evidence to help them to believe that this was real. So for people who don't have access to a trusted medium, what can we do to begin opening the lines of communication and actually believe that we are getting true information?
And you just hit the key right there, Lisa. Belief is the number one key. We have to believe the spirit world is real. Otherwise, we're not even going to try. I began this journey when my stepdaughter Susan was struck and killed by lightning. And seeing her body in that coffin was such a shock to me, because I realized then and there, it's the spirit that animates the body. And I went on a mission then. I'm going to find out if it's real. Is there really a spirit world? And I began reading everything I could get my hands on. And that started opening my mind, hearing stories from evidence-based mediums, having no idea I would one day be one, because I never had that ability or the awareness of it until after Susan passed. So as my belief opened, I then began practicing to quiet my mind, thinking, I want to have that connection myself. Nobody told me I couldn't do it. So I was absolutely determined to open that up. And it has opened so beautifully. So what we have to do is have the belief that we can connect. Then we have to come into alignment with our true nature, which is light beings, souls. And the basis of that is love. So we have to clear out any sluggish energy within ourselves, anything that's not aligned with love. So this whole journey helps us as well. And then we have to simply shift our focus from being so focused on this physical world to belief and awareness that there is another world right here, right now. And by just having the intention and placing our attention on that world, even if we've never touched it before, that connection can be made by anyone, because we all are souls here and now.
Okay. So what would be some beginning steps? Because I think a lot of people, they may not believe, because they're either skeptical that there either isn't life after death, or that they personally don't have the gifts or talents to do this kind of thing. So maybe baby steps in that direction would be best. What would be the first steps to take?
Again, you've got to examine your own thoughts. What are my beliefs? Are they blocking me? It's okay to be skeptical, but be open-minded and open-hearted. So turn up your own light through loving thoughts, set the intention of connecting. And the first step would be talking to your loved ones, knowing they're right here, trusting they're here, and trusting that they hear you. Then ask for a sign that they hear you or that they're around. And you can ask for specific signs. what often happens that most people don't realize is when we ask for a specific sign, in that moment, before we say, I want you to send me in that brief pause, the very loved one we're trying to connect with puts a thought of a sign in our head, knowing we're going to encounter that in the coming days. So I want you to show me, this actually happened to me, a silver medallion. And I thought, well, that's strange, but okay, I want to see a silver medallion if this is really you. And the next day I flew on an airline and just happened to leaf through the magazine in the back of the seat. And I'm leafing through it and it says, if you get enough airline miles with us, you'll earn silver medallion status. That's what I mean by a sign. You don't have to look for it. It falls into your awareness because you ask. So many people don't think to ask.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. In fact, sometimes the signs sort of come without necessarily asking. Like, for example, my mother-in-law, every year on her birthday, her favorite music box just starts playing, and we have not wound that thing in years, but every year on her birthday just plays a few little tinkly notes, and we know that she's saying hello. So then let's get back to the topic of specific ancestral healing. Let's say that a family has a dysfunctional pattern where they've noticed, you know what, every generation does this exact same thing. Or perhaps there's even addictions. I've even heard where people who are alcoholics might have spirits hanging around them who were alcoholics in their physical lifetimes, and they get their fix by standing over this person who's now drinking too much. Do you see a lot of that kind of thing?
What you just spoke of there, I've heard of from two people, but I don't have experience of that. But what I do have many experiences of is in my readings, those on the spirit world come through for our healing and for theirs as well. They come to make amends, to offer apologies, to ask for forgiveness. So I see many things in symbols. And when I see that, I was an alcoholic. So just today I did a reading, in fact, and the gentleman across the veil showed me that sign, but then showed me put it aside, showed me one generation back was alcoholic. And so these trends do come through and they bring them up for a reason. I can't tell you how many times I've heard in a reading, be it alcoholism, be it abusive behavior, whatever it is, many times a mother or a father will say, I don't want that to be my legacy. Please accept my forgiveness and may the legacy end right here. That's beautiful and very healing.
Right, yeah. So are there any specific tools that we can use to increase our connection?
Absolutely. You want to work on quieting your mind and practicing presence. The spirits are talking to us quite often. Now, granted, it's a very subtle vibration, which is why we need to clear out the more dense vibrations of, as I said before, anything that's not aligned with love. So we work on ourselves and catch ourselves being very human. So we don't have to be perfect, but set the intention of raising our vibration. And then again, clearing space so that when they do talk to us, we sense it. Most of us are so busy all the time. There's monkey mind chatter going on in our heads. We go from one thing to another. We need to be busy all the time. The moment we find ourselves with a minute of free time, we pick up our cell phones, right? And we're checking email or Facebook or whatever. So what if we at least spend 10 minutes a day being quiet? That carries out throughout the day. And then when your loved ones step in, you may start to notice that. Very important.
Okay. So what is your experience then with, I know some people like to smell their grandmother's perfume and that's how they know that she's present. Do you have experience with that?
Exact scenario. Before I knew that I would be a medium one day, in fact, this is in my memoir, that I was standing at my father's bedside in hospice. And I turned to my sister and said, look, I told you I smelled grandma's perfume around here, not knowing that was a sign from loved ones, a very specific perfume that I only ever smelled with her. And my sister turned to me and she said, I don't smell it. And looking back now, it's so clear that she came to help her son across the veil. Beautiful. People will smell cigars The spirit world will use whatever of our senses they can to get through to us, to say, I'm still here. The most beautiful thing I love is every session I do, they show me something going on in their loved one's lives now, a current event, to show that this is not just a visit today for a reading. They look in on us often.
Okay. Well, now we've sort of talked about what connecting with them can do for those of us who are in the physical world, but how about working backwards through time? If we connect with them, how does the ripple effect work running backwards through the generations?
They've shown me that it's like a 12-step program that those across the veil need to make amends for their own soul's growth. They've shown me they're not being judged by anyone across the veil other than themselves, and that the life review is very real, that any of us, when we pass, see the effects, feel the effects of all of our choices, all of our actions, which should get everybody's attention. So before you open your mouth and say something, think, if I have to deal with this in the future, maybe I better get this right now. So they come to, again, ask for forgiveness, make apologies. And I know that that's helpful for their own growth. We do grow at our own rate across the veil, just as we do here. We don't suddenly sprout angel rings just because we're in the spirit world. It's all about the evolution of the soul. So if we can give forgiveness to someone across the veil as we grow spiritually and understand that we make decisions based on where we are at the time and we do our best, then by offering forgiveness, truly those across the veil feel it. It turns their light up.
Okay. So
you know,
then,
if I could just interrupt, Lisa,
yes.
One statement I don't want to fail to say today is I like to tell everybody, don't wait until you have to seek out a medium from across the veil to say what needs to be said. Say it now to your loved ones here, because that's why I'm often set up by those in the spirit world. It's very clear that they helped orchestrate me coming together with certain clients when a reading ends up exactly on their birthday or on the date that they pass, and they have something very important to say. This is a very interactive experience, and the spirit world is just as involved as we are in making it happen.
Okay. Well, it sounds like this is sort of a common theme that you've come across, people asking for forgiveness. Are there any others that you see a lot of?
Oh, well, the main message is, I'm okay. I love you. Don't worry about me. Don't be sad because I feel that. This is the key to evidential mediumship. It's not all about the evidence. There's a reason those spirits want to talk to you now. They have messages to deliver. But some people like me, if we're very left-brained with our backgrounds, the way we're raised, we need that evidence so that we believe and trust those messages, those beautiful words that our loved ones want to share with us are truly coming from them.
Okay. Well, then let's go back again to the healing aspect of this. Have you worked with people who are in this physical realm where they're actually quite ill and they've spoken with, or you've delivered messages from the other side where they've actually helped heal themselves physically with information?
I've done that with physical health and mental health as well. I have a dear friend now who I met through doing a reading for her daughter. And her daughter showed me that her mom was stuck in her grief. One moment, like a Groundhog Day moment, that she just kept focusing on, this moment when her daughter collapsed, one of her last moments with her. And she couldn't get past it. And guides stepped in from across the veil and allowed healing energy to come through. And it absolutely healed her of that instantaneously, orchestrated by her daughter. So that was beautiful. I've had other times when loved ones have shown me an illness going on in my client. I'm not a medical medium. That's not my specialty, but when it needs to come through, it does. Like a woman in England, I said, your father is showing me there's a challenge in your water. It's giving you headaches. It's making you nauseous and sick. And she said, I have been dealing with nausea and headaches, but my doctor can't figure out what it is. And her father gave me a chemical compound. Turns out her dad was a chemist. And I said, he's telling you to test your water for this. You know, she actually went out and brought in a company to test it, and that was in the pipes. And they fixed it, and the headaches went away. Astounding.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's pretty powerful stuff. And again, as a person who's trying to figure out my own stuff, and I'm sure our viewers are as well, again, if we don't have access to a medium that we trust, because there's only one of you, and
Well, I'm training more. We're training
yes, you
lots
are.
of evidence-based mediums. Yes.
Yeah, thank you for that. Are there ways that we can get like genuinely detailed information like that kind of thing without having to track down somebody?
Oh, yes. I mean, this is what all my work is about, is empowering everybody to go within for this guidance. It will come from loved ones across the veil. It may come from guides or spirit itself, the light, universe, whatever you want to call it. But so many people fail to ask because they don't understand that we are all connected. It's one universal mind directing all of this. So, oh, I remember the moment my own mother had suicidal thoughts, and she had never been like this before. And I just, knowing what I know, stepped to the side, shifted my awareness and said, whoever has the answer, what is going on with my mother? And just like that, this word popped into my mind, oxybutynin. So what is that? I went to her pill list, and there it was. And it's on the list of don't give this medications to old people. Causes suicidal ideations. So if I hadn't known to ask, her doctor was ready to put her in hospice when it was caused by a medication that he had prescribed. So my point here is, when we don't know to ask, we wander around just wondering, I don't know what to do about this. What should I do? But can you feel the difference between that, just diffuse wondering, versus whoever is listening, perhaps my family members, guide me. What specific guidance do you give me for this specific issue? Some people who've been working to expand their awareness, to clear their field, will get an immediate answer, as I did. But others may just get these downloads or an insight, or will find that they run into just the right person. And for some reason, they think to ask that person. The spirit world will put thoughts in our heads, guide us, and it comes through as intuition to us. So we learn to follow our intuition, but most especially ask those questions directly and specifically of higher consciousness.
Okay. So what if we come from a family that we believe, but the rest of the family thinks that we're nuts for even considering this type of thing? So that will block us from getting the information, but also we can't share that information if we do get it, when we get it, with our family members. Do you have any recommendations on getting through to people who need the information?
You're making me laugh. I just moved to South Carolina, and my answer to that is, bless their souls. Bless their hearts, right? We have understanding and compassion for those who aren't where we are. We may be wrong about things as well. You know, there are some things we'll find out for sure when we all cross the veil. My dad thought when you die, the big black curtain comes down and that's it. And I remember looking at him and saying, Dad, when we cross the veil and I cross the veil and meet you, we'll have that discussion then. And we laughed about it. You know, if you have information that you feel is valuable for someone here and you received it from higher consciousness, you don't have to say where you got it. Just say, I have something that I feel I want to share with you. If someone does not believe what you believe, again, respect their path, send them love, and keep doing what your heart tells you.
Right, right. And I know that it's easy enough to use examples like pennies from heaven as little synchronicities to sort of help people understand how this works. Does that work for you?
Pennies from heaven are signs that many people get, but skeptics would eat that up. You know, hey, I find pennies all the time. So be aware of how things will sound to the skeptics when you're sharing it. Don't try to change skeptics' mind, because it could be a losing battle. But if you have some evidence that cannot be denied and people trust you, okay, you might want to share that, but not with an agenda, and not if their response is going to knock the wind out of your own sails. Just respect what you know and share your happiness. But if they try to bring you down, don't even go there anymore.
Okay. Now, do you have any recommendations for if somebody is trying to do this for themselves? Do you have a recommendation for who they should specifically ask to speak with or to communicate with?
You mean a loved one across the veil, or help
Right.
here?
Well, when they're first starting to ask somebody, please tell me this information, do you have a filter, or is it just anybody who has this information?
It would be first of all, if there's somebody really close to a certain issue. For instance, I remember doing a reading where a woman wanted to hear from her mother, and her mother came through from across the veil, and she said, look, we're having a big family problem. What does my mother have to say about that? And I asked Mom, and I said, your mom's showing me that you 3 kids are all fighting over the money she left behind. She shows me you've gone to a lawyer, and this is actually, there's a court case about it. And your mother just said, clear as day, if I knew what that money would do, I would have burned it before I passed. Whoa. And spot on what was going on with the family, because Mom knows. So when we realize that our loved ones really have our best interests, hopefully we behave a little bit more lovingly with each other. But who you ask is the one who is closest to whatever the issue, or the one with whom you have the biggest heart connection, because love is what creates the best connection. So clear out, like I said, anything that's less than loving in yourself. Turn up your heart light, as E.T. said, and ask the question.
Okay. Well, then, what about if one of our ancestors was possibly abusive, maybe even dangerous?
Yes.
You wouldn't necessarily ask them to come through, but what if they do come through?
I'll give you a perfect example of that, doing a reading for a woman where several loved ones came in, and then all of a sudden I felt this male presence, and I said, oh, there's a gentleman just showed up. He's showing me shackles as if he was arrested or had handcuffs, and he's showing me a Raggedy Ann doll, and he's beating it like this. And as I was trying to discern who he was to her, she stiffened and she said, make him go away. It was shocking. And I said, you need to go away. And all of a sudden I said, oh my goodness, this doll is symbolic of you. This man beat you. It's a former husband. She said, I don't want to talk to him. Make him go away. This is the only time that had happened. And this man was accompanied by 2 higher beings, like guides. And I tuned in and I said, she wants you to leave. And he hung his head down, my symbol for an apology. I told my client, he's only come because he needs to apologize to you. And she said, I don't want to hear it. Make him leave. And I turned to him and I said, your message has been delivered. And that's all we can ever do, is deliver the apology. And then these guides escorted him away. Usually I don't feel beings who have really done truly horrible things, but it was so interesting to me that he was being helped by loving beings. He came to make amends. And now that's her journey to find the forgiveness. It doesn't always happen. But when we realize that by understanding that hurt people, we see that forgiveness really does end that legacy.
Right. Yeah.
And it happens like that.
So if she or somebody like her does not accept the apology, do you believe that there's still a ripple effect in her energy field, her life, her thought process that will still create change? Or is it really up to her to allow it?
The fact that he asked for an apology does help, but the fact that she couldn't offer it, there's no judgment of her, but that's an energetic block. So she's not allowing her light to shine as brightly as it could. That could possibly create a karmic issue that she might have to deal with in the future. So that's why we're here, to experience life in all of its facets. Doesn't mean it's easy, but when we can come into alignment with our true nature, which is love, things just flow better. So I would bet you that until she did find that forgiveness, she had a lot more struggle in her life. The moment we realize who we really are, expressions of love, of the light, then we start to see things flowing. We realize that's what it's all about.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Now you mentioned earlier that once you cross the veil, you still got work to do. So, I mean, I know a lot of people think that as soon as you die, you become an angel and you're all wise and all knowing and all loving and you're just this marvelous being, but that's not necessarily the case. And I know time is rather meaningless when you're on the other side, but let's just use time as a shortcut word. How much time does it take for somebody to work through their stuff on the other side before they can actually come through as a well ancestor and offer healing?
It's absolutely individual as we are as interconnected lights. So I will see a sign from those across the veil. When they go like this, that means my eyes have been opened. I realize it's all about shining our light. I'm really working on myself. They may show me they were very critical with their word, that they were abusive. See how I get signals like charades. And that way their loved one recognizes them. So say, for example, you had a mother who was critical and abusive. If I came in and said, oh, your mother is just waiting to hug and kiss you across the veil, she loves you so much, you'd sit back and say, that's not my mother. So they show me the way we would recognize them. Then when I see this, that means I've seen the light. Literally, I'm working on myself. I can't wait to make amends, to hug you, to meet up with you again. And it's brilliant the way they show me that. Some people, I've had others that just show up and they hang back, and just making their presence known is a first step, but they're still working on themselves. Then I've had others who are immediately awake and alert and free across the veil, free of baggage, free of the human issues. And that's a beautiful thing. So the thing is, that's why I say, work on yourself now rather than later.
Right. Don't bring that stuff with you.
Yeah.
Now, what about people who have been adopted and don't know their birth family? My assumption is that you can pick up messages from their adoptive family ancestors as well as their physical family ancestors. Is that accurate?
Good. It's more challenging because I'll bring through evidence from them, but if they didn't know them, then they can't validate it. So we just have to trust, especially in the middle of a reading. If we get 3 or 4 family members, family ancestors, and then someone they don't know, and I'll say, this is your adoptive father, he's showing me this and that. Because everything else was evidential, that gives us some trust that this is true.
Okay. All right. Looking at the clock here, before we go any further in our conversation, I want to make sure that I mention your website, and that is SuzanneGiesemann.com. Let me spell it real quick. It's SuzanneGiesemann.com, and that'll be on the website on the Shift Network website as well. What will people find if they visit your website?
A treasure trove of videos and information and recordings from my guides, thousands of beautiful messages about increasing our vibration from my guides, books and CDs, and just, if you want to learn about the spirit world, it truly is packed with information. So I hope people will visit it because we've worked hard to make it valuable for people.
Right, right. Yes, you do have a lot of content on there. Thank you for sharing that. So let me ask you, if you don't mind, a personal story. What would be a really demonstrative story of what you've learned with regard to ancestral healing, specifically with your ancestors?
Well, I want to say what I've learned, it's still from someone else's, if you don't mind. I mean, my stepdaughter, Susan, has come through. Oh, that's a beautiful one. Yeah, my guides just told me the direct answer to that. So if I could just quickly share 2 stories then. The first one about my own ancestors is when my dad came through on Christmas morning and made his presence so clear by showing me that my mom had just found her electric curlers the day before and that they didn't work. When my mom validated that, I said, well, guess what? Dad wants me to give you a reading. My own mom. It had never occurred to me. And when I did that reading on Christmas morning, her mother and father came through. Now, I knew my grandfather till he passed when I was 16, and I knew him as a jovial, wonderful grandfather. But he showed me such a different side of him that I never knew, the side my mother knew growing up. And my grandmother I never knew. She passed very young. She showed me just really a truly awful childhood from my mom. And I said, Mom, you didn't know any love at all growing up. Your parents never even said, I love you. And she said, oh no, as if that was just her life. But she never talked about it. And I was a little ashamed that I'd never asked. But it was so evidential for me. And I thought, Mom, how did you get to be so loving yourself? And then here's my dad. And it was Well, of course, their love for each other overcame the lack of love in both of their lives growing up. That to me was eye-opening and beautiful, very evidential for me, and healing too. It allowed me to forgive a lot of my mom's very human behaviors. Even though she was loving, we all have our faults. And so that was helpful.
Right.
The other point I wanted to make about making assumptions and not making assumptions was when a woman reached out to me and said, I need to have a reading and I need it now. I must have a reading. She was so insistent. I thought she needed healing badly. So I tuned in, and the only person who came through was her uncle. And she said, well, that's exactly who I needed to hear from. And I'm thinking that somehow parents or children or spouses are more important in a reading than an uncle. That was a lesson for me, and not dismissing anyone, because she wanted that reading to help her father, still here, heal. He was getting older, he was depressed, and she knew he missed his brother, her uncle. His brother came through showing incredible evidence, including high school rings that they both had because they were twins that their mother had given them. Her father was transformed by that reading, by the awareness that his twin brother still cared about him from the other side, was still here at all. And that's what connecting with our loved ones does for us. Shows us that love never dies, that life is eternal. There's purpose in our lives, whether we're here or whether our soul's continuing across the veil. Every action we take is important, so let's align it with love.
All right, beautifully said. I also really love the way that when you got the message from your guide, you looked to the side and went, oh yeah, as if they are actually standing there, and there was an actual, and it's just your vibe shifted where I was actually feeling really tingly just watching you do that.
They had a better story than I did. Which is always the case. So we have to remember to ask. We'll always get higher answers than our own.
Right. So that, I think, was really a perfect demonstration for people who are learning this, what to watch out for. You didn't actually hear a voice that I could hear, but you obviously got information, and it was palpable. So that's, I think, a really good way for people to know this is what to listen for. I get messages when I'm in the shower, when of course I can't write them down because you can't bring paper into the shower, but yeah.
Yep. It comes in many times sounding like our own thoughts, but for me it was, no, they quickly showed me that reading for my mom on Christmas Day. And I just know their vibe so much, and they always come in here, that I recognized it. So ask your guides. And many times our ancestors are our guides, not always. We all have guides who are with us from the moment we're born. But in some cases, when we had a real strong connection with someone, they become a guide also when they cross the veil. So ask your guides to make it evident when they're around, help you to know they're with you. It's a great journey, and it never ends, and it's always full of surprises and wondrous events. So set the intention of being more connected, and it'll happen.
Okay, great. I'm just, one last question is coming to mind here. As far as people's, say, religious upbringings, do you find that people will get messages from beings that are sort of disguised, isn't the right word, but I can't think of a better one, as somebody from their religious academies, like saints if they're Catholic, or that type of thing? Do you find that that happens?
Oh yes, and spirit is very creative and benevolent. We are the light, and so we simply set the intention that any beings that come to us are only of the highest light. And we're always protected. We just turn up the light and know that. And so we invite in whatever guidance is going to help our soul's journey. And so if we expect to speak with an archangel or with Jesus or with Buddha, that is possible. And in fact, in my classes, I share evidence of my own communications of that type. Having not been raised in any religion, that's been to me some of the most stunning evidence that I've received, showing me that we are all part of something so much greater than we may even be aware of. And when we set the skepticism aside and be open to whatever will help our soul's journey and those around us, spirit pulls out all the stops.
All right. Wow. Beautifully stated. I want to thank you so much for being with us today, Suzanne. Before we go, is there anything that we've left out that you want to make sure that we talk about?
I hear we are complete.
Perfect. That's all we need to know then. Thank you again, Suzanne Giesemann. And I want to thank everyone who joined us today. I hope you enjoyed this conversation in the Ancestral Healing Summit.
Thank you for joining the Ancestral Healing Summit, brought to you by the Shift Network. To learn more, visit ancestralhealingsummit.com. To learn more about our global programs to support you in waking up in all the areas of your life and taking inspired action, visit theshiftnetwork.com. Thank you again for joining us and for sharing this empowering path of healing your lineages with your friends and family.